we've aged immensely
I
since
know.
then.
Oh, goodness, it's so good to see everyone. Well,
It is super good to see
it's
everyone.
good to see you.
Yeah, it's been a while since we've been on here, so it's really nice to be back. When was the last time you were on here?
Honestly, Sean, I'm trying to think. I think it was definitely
Like
February.
Yeah, February for me as well. And I
yeah.
was like super pregnant then too. So
It's like a good 4 months.
Yeah.
Since we've gone. Yeah. Well, it's good to be back. I really have missed it. And I'm so glad to be here because of
Prettiness.
this news. Charlotte
Yeah.
made it, didn't you?
Well, actually, I designed it. Richard Hill made it.
Rick
Yeah.
Hill made it, but
Yeah.
Charlotte masterminded it.
Yeah,
It's
masterminded.
beautiful.
Yeah. We'll go with that.
Yeah, it's beautiful. I hope everyone is doing well on this wet Wednesday.
Oh, I know.
What happened to the
I know.
sun?
I feel like we had like a really nice set of nice weather.
And then it's all gone.
And now it's all gone. But you had a nice time in Wales.
I
and
did.
You said that was really good weather.
Honestly, guys, because I guess it's like a common thing that people say Wales is always rainy, but it was the complete opposite. I'd actually prepared myself for there to be no sunshine, but I was pleasantly surprised. We had a lovely getaway.
Good.
Yeah,
Good.
really,
Some
really nice.
family time, chill out,
Family
rest,
time, recuperation, just rejuvenation. It was so good.
Is that where the title has come from?
I was gonna say that really sounds a lot what we're gonna be talking about today. We're gonna be talking about
rest. Yes, the importance of rest.
Yes.
Which I feel is like a really simple topic, but so many of us kind of get it wrong, or we just do it in different ways, or we don't bother taking any rest at all. We get ourselves in trouble later down the line. But
I'm really looking forward to the conversation. We were just talking about it just now of our own experiences and what we've learned about rest and the importance of it. So I hope that you guys stay tuned with us and that you can even bring some more people on. So if you know someone who would benefit from this chat, I would encourage you to tag them in the comments or something, get their attention, share this to their page, do something. And I can see a few comments coming through. I can see Canel. Good
both looking
evening.
great.
Thank you, Canel. We're trying to be like you.
I feel like this bit of me looks okay. This bit below the table has probably got like some baby sick on there. I mean, quite frankly, there could be baby poo on there. Who knows?
There is,
honest.
and there's two babies.
There's two babies. Yeah, there's two babies now.
Yes, Charlotte and Sam have had two babies.
Yeah, so we had baby Maeva. She was born on the 15th of April. She was like 8 pounds 4 ounces, I think she was.
And she's the cutest baby.
She's very cute. So cute. And she's very good, actually. She's sleeping through the night already, whoop whoop, which is brilliant because obviously if you've got two babies, sleep is definitely what you're aiming for. So honestly, we're really blessed from that side.
How old is she now?
She is 9 weeks. 9 weeks tomorrow.
9 weeks and sleeping through the night. Wow. That's a blessing.
I know. Yeah. It is a massive blessing. And obviously, like Chloe's sleeping through the night. We do have the odd one where like Maeva will wake up at like 4 a.m. Chloe hears her, and then Chloe's awake at 4 a.m. and everyone's in bed with us, and it's just a bit chaotic. There's bottles of milk, and
adjusting, isn't
nappies,
it? Yeah, adjusting.
It is.
A lot of the team have been feeling like that. It's just been a funny period of time. I'm guessing that's the reason why you've taken some time out, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so Sam and I obviously took a little bit of time out. Obviously, when you first have a newborn, life gets a little bit crazy, especially if you've got already one that is so young as well. So
what's the age difference? Is it?
It is really only 14 months.
14 months. Yeah. 2 under 2.
Ooh. 2 under 2. Yes, it is hard work.
But I'm sure God's giving you guys the grace.
Yeah, He is. And like I said, we're just so blessed that they're sleeping, and they both are really good eaters, and they're happy most of the time.
Well, they look like such cherubs, so I can't imagine them not being jolly.
You just wait.
Oh, that's good. That's good. Well, I'm going to introduce some of the team members that aren't actually with us because I kind of feel that there might be someone who's tuned in and may not know who we are and all the other teams, because it's not just myself and Charlotte, it's actually a team of 6 currently. Yeah,
exactly.
So I've already said Charlotte's name. I'll say I'm Tanya. We've been running Unsubscribed since September 2020.
Yeah, that's coming up for a year.
Honestly,
really quickly.
It's
I don't know
incredible
how that happens.
how time has gone by, and it's been like 26 episodes. I feel counting
26, 27 episodes.
27 episodes, and we've been running since then, and we've got Canel and Joel, who are also more regular than us. They've been holding down the fort while we've been having our time away,
which we really appreciate, Joel and Canel.
So honestly, a big shout out to you guys. Thank you so much.
And they do so much as well, because they take on a Sunday too.
Yes.
and they obviously have like work and other commitments. So yeah, we're so
we
fortunate.
appreciate you guys. Mwah, mwah,
Yeah.
mwah. And then we've got Charlotte's husband Sam, who also joins us, and then we've got Jade, who over the pandemic we had to split into like lockdown buddies, isn't it?
Yeah, and she was your lockdown buddy, right?
Jade was my lockdown buddy, and then Sam and Charlotte as a pair, and Joel and Canal as a pair. So yeah, thank you guys for tuning in, and we really look forward to, like I said, the conversation. It's going to be a good one. Yeah, should we kick off, or is there?
We shall kick off. Yeah.
I
go for it.
We've got the notifications about the different. So what's it called? The different broadcasts we have.
Oh.
Yes, we got the Sunday live.
Yeah.
Then we got the Word Up on the Sunday night.
Yeah.
Then we've got on Tuesdays stretch.
Yeah.
Then on every other Wednesday we've got Unsubscribe. Then also on a Monday we've also got Start the Week, which is a prayer and worship.
Yeah.
It starts at 7 in the morning.
If you're an early riser, that one's for you. If you've got babies, you can definitely do that, because I know you'll be up.
And I think that's pretty much all our broadcasts.
Yeah, that's definitely enough.
Yeah.
We've got a lot going on.
We've got a lot going on.
For sure.
Yeah.
And then a couple of weeks ago, in terms of like actual physical events and stuff, we had our encounter nights, which were really good.
Yeah.
You were leading worship, or leading some of the songs, which was fantastic.
Amazing. It was so nice to be in amongst people for the first time in like almost a year. Or no, more than a year.
Way more than a year, I think it was. Yeah.
So it's been really powerful. I think there might be some more coming up soon.
Yeah.
I don't want to talk too much, but I think something's going to be
like
coming.
Secret details.
Yes. Something. Keep your eyes open.
Keep them hanging. Keep them wanting more.
Keep them wanting more. No, but yeah, we're really looking forward to today. And I think what Charlotte said about the start of the week, I was just gonna say that it's a good way to set your mindset and to position yourself in a place of rest for the week. That's what I use start the week for, because it's like I have this whole week ahead of me, and there's just that moment of being still and letting God work in that moment, and then you're set for the week. So which is kind of almost what we're talking about today, isn't it, Charlotte?
It is. So we said that the title was going to be like the importance of rest, and like Tanya and I have just been having like a really good discussion on like the different aspects of rest, but actually there are so many. I mean, you can talk about like the spiritual side of things, you can talk about the mental, the physical, and then I was watching a little video earlier and they were actually talking about the social side of rest as well. And I think I had one that was called a creative side of rest, and maybe there was one more as well, a sensory side of rest too. So there's like a whole host of different, I guess, topics and things that fall into rest. But we're only going to talk about maybe a couple of them today, because it's such a big topic that's so underestimated at the same time. And obviously God wants us to rest. It's biblical. It's a biblical truth that we should be following.
Absolutely. If you don't take anything from that, rest is biblical.
Yeah. Go rest, people. Go rest. And in that case, we're done. Thank you very much.
God said go rest, and we can even look at it from the beginning, which we'll come back to, I'm certain, about how on the seventh day, God rested, and there is a lot of wisdom and revelation in that. But like Charlotte, I think we're going to talk about a few other ones before we get to the biblical form of resting.
So I was just going to give you like a definition, basically, first of all. So rest can be defined as renewing of depleted physical, emotional, spiritual, and mental reserves. Which is really good, because when I look at it, I think we say depleted, which actually, now I'm thinking about it, if we're saying depleted, it means that they had to be full at some point.
Exactly.
So God must have created us with these aspects full in our lives, and then somehow they begin to deplete after time, or from overcommitting, or from not resting enough. It's kind of like the love languages and the whole
love tank.
The love tank sort of idea, that if you don't take rest, then your tank won't be full, and you won't have any overflow to give to other people, if that makes sense, to be able to outpour into their lives.
Exactly. You need to be filled so that you can pour out, kind of thing.
That's it.
It's like this, I'm kind of getting this image of a bowl that it's got several outlets, but it needs to also receive something so that it can pour out to other people.
Exactly.
And I think sometimes as people who are generous and giving, you can almost feel like you don't give yourself enough time to rest, and you deplete yourself. So that's a really good definition. Yeah, really important.
And I think as well, like I guess from the season that I'm in at the moment, I've got 2 babies, and if you're out there and you've got kids, then I'm sure you'll know, and you'll know really well by now for sure, if they're older, definitely, that you always put them first. They're your priority, and so taking rest for yourself becomes difficult. You feel guilty about it. Like mum guilt is a real thing that you can't kind of like shake off. And taking time for yourself can be really hard. Finding the time to do that, even and giving the kids to someone else so that you can do it is
but
hard.
It's necessary though, isn't it?
Necessary. And I'm just kind of in a season where I'm navigating that at the moment, and I've been really blessed because we've been living with my mum and dad, but we've just moved into our house, which is great, and so we've got our own space and things, but then that means you're all together all the time, 24 hours a day kind of thing. So it's just learning to manage that well. But we were talking before we came online that actually we live in such a culture that we think that like rest is kind of like not a good thing to do. It's a counterculture. Exactly. It's exactly that, a counterculture, that we think it's cool that, for example, if we're contracted 37 and a half hours a week overtime, that you do overtime and you work an 18-hour day, and then you share that with your friends, and you're like, I've been at work today, and I've worked an 18-hour day, and it was really tough, and boo-hoo for me, but blah blah blah. And actually we should be able to take charge and work more efficiently and recognize that actually that isn't a great quality of a leader. And so if you're expecting yourself to do that, you're kind of expecting your team to do that as well, and
that's really good.
It's not cool. And so it's being able to identify when it gets too much and how we can move forward with that and fix it almost, and spend time recuperating and getting what we need, whether that's from like a physical point of view, a mental point of view, or a spiritual point of view, really.
Because what you're saying kind of feels like rest in some cultures or in some people, it's not a default. You don't naturally do it. You have to almost remind yourself to rest. I mean, I'm going to put my hand up and say resting isn't something that
you're good at.
No, I'm a busybody. I've got to be everywhere all the time. And if it wasn't for the pandemic, I mean, that's honestly, that was when I stopped. Like, it forced me to be. There was nowhere else I could go. You can only go for so many walks after some time. And I was like, this. At first, I really struggled, but it really, I suppose, I learned the power of resting through the pandemic. I mean, I know it was difficult for a lot of people, but one positive I got out of that was being in a place of rest.
Yeah, like, that's really good.
You know, and for some people, you just have to force yourself. I understand that, you know, you've got things to do and this, that, and the other. But if you just give yourself 15 minutes to sit down, fuel up, you know, it'll do so much more for you. It's like a car. Like, you, at some point, you've got to put fuel in the tank.
Exactly.
You know, because the car can't keep going 24/7. You know,
no, it can't.
You know, I'm not saying you're a car.
But you are.
Yeah, but that's a good point. I like that. Yeah.
I think so, and I think as well that like me as a person, and again we were discussing this too, that we're quite similar in how we do things. We're very organised people.
Yes.
We like to know what's going to happen. We're in control, or we like to think we're in control most of the time. And we don't allow or schedule time in for like God to move sometimes, or the Holy Spirit to move. And so it's just recognising that as individuals and taking charge of that, that actually we need to allow time for God to move and the Holy Spirit to speak to us, as opposed to just like scheduling our days and scheduling what we're going to do all the time.
Schedule and rest. How about that? Schedule and rest.
I like it.
You know,
I like
put that in there. Because I mean, for me, that's how I have to rest. Because if my day can easily fill up with activities and this, that, and the other. But if I don't force myself to do it, I'm not going to do it. And it's just so important that we do it. And we're going to talk more about it. But resting is very important to the heart of God as well. Working and doing things for other people is good, but resting as well is just as important. I think sometimes the guilt comes in, which you're going to talk about later, is you almost feel like if you're resting, then the world is nothing's going to happen. And that's what I kind of feel. If Tanya's not doing it, nothing's going to happen. But that's just not the case. You find that if you actually let things go, somehow it just gets done.
Yeah.
It's like there are other people that can do stuff.
Yeah, it can be like a pride thing as
It can
well,
be
isn't
pride.
it?
Honestly, it is.
Yeah, I think you get to
Yeah.
the point where, well, I know definitely for me
Yeah.
at work previously, I used to think, well, if I don't do this, it won't get done properly, which actually isn't the case at all.
Exactly.
It would get done, and yes, there might be like learning points from it from other people in my team that have done it maybe, but I need to like release those kinds of things and tasks for other people to do and take rest in it myself. Because otherwise, how can you ever empower and encourage and train up other people?
If you're constantly doing everything.
Exactly. And that can be in a workplace environment, a church environment, even a family environment as well.
No, that's good.
So I'm not going to make the dinner tomorrow night.
It's on you.
I'm going to rest and you are going to make the dinner tomorrow night. And you will learn.
No, but that's really good. And, you know, like what Charlotte had said at the beginning, there's various different kinds of rest, which one thing you mentioned about social rest, which is one thing I never really thought about, but it's really important.
I know, that was the first time I'd heard that today myself, and it got me thinking too.
Like, sometimes it's okay to not go out sometimes and be amongst people. I mean, introverts, that's a natural thing for you guys, but I'd say I'm an extrovert. I like to be amongst people, but sometimes it's okay to not come out and just spend time with yourself.
To say no and just like put yourself forward. I was saying earlier that basically when I first became a mum with Chloe and we moved back to the UK, we were in lockdown obviously, and then the rules were lifted slightly and you could meet people in gardens and bits and pieces. And I made like plans to go and meet my friends, and I was quite busy for a lot of the time, but actually what I found myself happening was that I was overcommitting to these things, and I was in a season the fact that kids are so unpredictable. You have to be like really fluid with them. Some days they have bad days, some days they have good days, some days you'll like go out and other days you just need to stay in. And so I ended up like having to cancel all these plans to fit in with like what Chloe needed, which at the time I was like, I felt like I was like bailing on my friends and things, but actually I was kind of noting that I needed to rest. I needed to rest with her and in different ways of what that looked like, and the stimulation that she needed, and just identifying different ways, really.
And the good thing is, resting can look differently for different people. I mean, some people rest in the garden doing bits and bobs, just I don't know, what do they call it? Pottering. That's the word. Pottering around in the garden. Some people it's, I don't know, being a couch potato, watching some Netflix. I don't know. How do you rest?
I don't really know. Now you say that. I mean, that's such a good question.
How do you rest?
How do you rest? Like, how do you rest productively? I think of it, what I like to do is, I'm kind of like you from a social perspective. Like, I like to go and see like my friends. I like to go and see Kim, and I like to go and see Katie and other people. And for me, I'm like, oh, well, that's kind of like restful. But actually, it might be relaxing, and it might be like just hanging out with my friends, but it's not really resting.
Right.
So
how do you rest, Charlotte?
I don't know. No? I think I like sitting down on the couch with nothing on, as in TV wise.
Just sitting still on the couch.
Just sitting still on the couch, maybe having some music on. If the kids are in the background doing something, then that's fine. But I just like the stillness and the quietness of life. And I think that's one of the things I found hard when I was living with my mum and dad. Actually, they kind of had the TV on in the background quite a lot, and I'm not really there for that. Like, if you got the TV on, watch something. If it's not on, like, do something else, or just like chill out or something. I know people like it for background noise, but for me,
it's
I
a
actually
bit distracting.
I just like it off, and then I'm like alone with my thoughts.
That's
really
good. Well, tell us, guys, how do you guys rest? For those who are watching, we're talking about the importance of rest, and I was just asking Charlotte how she rests, and I would like to pose the question to you guys of how do you rest? I mean, for me personally, I rest through sitting down with a cup of coffee in my hand, in the stillness of the morning. I actually like to get to the cafe really early in the morning, and there's no one there, and I'm just sitting there and just watching the world go by. That is how I rest, and actually that's how I hear the voice of God. You know, and funny enough, it's when you're resting and you're relaxed, that's when you hear. Do you know what I mean? Like, because some people feel relaxed and de-stressed in a shower or in a hot bath, and funny enough, that's where people hear God's voice. Do you know what I mean? So I feel like there is I suppose there's a relationship between rest and hearing.
I think so. I think it's like taking that time out, like turning off the background noise that's going on in your life, and realizing and giving God, I guess, time to move and
Yeah.
time to work and speak to you about life and the Holy Spirit. Yeah.
And just what we a point that Charlotte raised earlier about how rest in some cultures, well, in the Western culture, I would say, is countercultural, and by that we mean it's something we don't value. You know, we value long hour days, working several days a week, and you know, constantly on the go. Whereas in some cultures, like African cultures, we rest like no man's business, and that can be quite frustrating for some people who come from a Western culture coming into like the African context, because everything is relaxed and slow paced, and it's like, why are you guys so slow? But it's in our culture, we value resting, you know, we value taking things easy, and I think I suppose for some people it's learned. You learn to rest, and other people you have to learn to. For some people it comes naturally to them, and some people have to learn to rest. But in any case, it's important to do it. You know.
Yeah.
So
same culturally in terms of like Middle East as well.
Yes,
I think.
Yeah.
Like they are very like manana, like chilled out vibes, and so if you're trying to get anything done, like a lot of the like paperwork and visas and stuff like that is done by locals. And you're like, why is this not done yet? Honestly, like you'll queue up in one of these centres and you could be there all day waiting for like a stamp on a visa or a stamp on a piece of paper. But actually they're like totally chilled the whole time, and it will be when it will be, and they just say inshallah. They say inshallah all the time, and you're like, not inshallah, like just get it done
today.
Even in a work environment as well. I mean, super frustrating sometimes, but that's the culture.
And if you think about it, people are so happy. And you're just like, how are you guys just so relaxed and chilled about everything?
Exactly.
They're not tightly wound and constant. Because honestly, I love London, right? But if you try and walk in the London Underground or any street in London, if you walk slow, oh my goodness, like you
get tuts, people push you out the way,
someone try and fight you. And I feel like that is reflecting of how we are just constantly on the go in our culture. Whereas if like walking fast in Africa, what is that? Why are you walking fast for? Like, where are you going? But my point is, people that are restful are happier. That's the honest truth, you know. And when you are trying to work constantly, you'll end up frustrated, and you end up really.
Have you got statistics behind that?
Yeah. I will have to Google or Wikipedia them, the most accurate place. But upon our observation, I've noticed the happier people are the people that are resting. I mean, I'm happy when I'm rested. So I'm guessing you are as well. So,
and then, funnily enough, on statistics, segue in there, I was looking at this little video today, and it said they did like a study on rest and asked like a number of questions, and 53% of people don't factor in rest into their schedule, and the main barriers were they didn't know how to, which actually is what you just asked me, and it's hard to know how to take rest, and they feel guilty. And actually, they were overcommitted in most aspects of their lives.
Wow.
Yeah.
That is incredible. 53 people said
53% of people asked.
People don't know how to rest.
Yeah.
And on the question we asked you guys, Canel said, she rests. I like a good hot bath or time out on the bed. Mental rest, away from people, doing something on my own, cooking, gardening, cinema, restaurant, etc. Yes, keep it coming, guys. Tell us how you rest. I mean, but those statistics are harrowing, because I feel like half of the population aren't resting. Yeah. You know, and that's
maybe
sad.
why that's with sometimes horrible people.
Yeah. Sometimes.
Myself included. Yeah.
Yeah, because I mean, when you're tired and stuff, you get
aggravated.
Which is not good. So rest, guys. Yeah. Rest. Okay, lovely. That's a good one. I mean, I've got so many points to talk about resting and the lessons I've learned. But like I said, with the pandemic, I feel like that's one where I've learned the most about resting, you know, and learning about the importance of it. And one thing I did also want to say is, and I'm going to give it an example. When someone undergoes major surgery, like a trauma, if you will, there has to be time of resting so that you can heal. Now, if we look back 2020 and all of the things that have happened, that has been a form of a trauma. It may not have been a physical trauma, but it's a mental or an emotional trauma, and you need to give yourself time to rest. Yeah. So I was going to say, you know, if for anything, the fact that what we've been through with the pandemic, still going through it, you need to factor in that time to rest, because just like a wound, needs time to be healed. the same way you yourself physically mentally and emotionally need to give yourself time to heal as well, and how you do it is between you and God, and but it's important to do that. So taking the time out to heal. Well, I mean, there's several types of rest that we've talked about. We've talked about social resting. We talked about physical resting, I feel.
I feel we've kind of covered that. We should move on to maybe spiritual resting.
I think so. And that's one we've been doing it like interchangeably, because I feel like as Christians, that's how, I think that centers everything we do, you know, because when you have that, I suppose, spiritual rest down, everything else I feel comes along with it.
Okay, yeah.
Does that make sense? Like, that's how I feel. I feel like for me, when my spiritual life is
good and flourishing,
yes,
and it's fruitful,
every other place, it's almost like that's where all the issues of life flow from. You know, similar to what is it Proverbs that's saying about guarding your heart. In a way, your spiritual life is where everything else kind of flows from. You know, so talking about spiritual rest, we were talking about it at the beginning about how it is a biblical thing, and God intends us to rest. And I kind of feel like showing that video, Charlotte. Do you think I should?
It's a really good video. It's got great illustrations in it. So if you're like a visual learner,
which I am,
then it will hit the nail on the head.
And it'll kind of sort of illustrate the point we want to make, and then we'll come back and have a discussion. So this is one from the Bible Project. Check it out, guys.
The number 7 is a big deal in the Bible.
Yeah, in biblical Hebrew, the word 7 is connected to the idea of fullness or completeness.
And that's something we all long for, but don't often experience. Instead, we find ourselves working endlessly, fighting back chaos with no real rest.
Yes. Now keep all that in mind as we turn to Genesis 1 in the Bible. It begins with darkness and disorder, but then God speaks to bring about light and order so that life can flourish.
And this happens over the course of 6 days.
Each day is marked with the phrase, "There was evening and there was morning." But on the 7th day, something special happens.
God stops and rests.
Right. Creation is brought to its completion on the 7th day. And that phrase, "There was evening and there was morning," it doesn't appear on day 7.
It's like a day with no end.
On the 7th day, God's presence fills his creation. The land provides for all of God's creatures, including humans, who are appointed to rule the world with God forever.
Kings and queens of the 7th day rest. I can get into that.
But the humans are deceived by a dark power, and they forfeit that rest. They're exiled into the wilderness, where they have to work as slaves to the land.
Until they die and return to the dust from which they came.
But God wants to restore humanity back to that 7th day rest. So he chooses to give the family of Israel that experience of ultimate rest so they can share it with others.
But how? They're in Egypt, slaves to an oppressive empire who's grinding them into the dust.
So God confronts Egypt and he liberates the Israelites, taking them through the darkness and chaos on the way to the promised land.
Now, while they're on their way, they find themselves in the wilderness. It's easy to get lost, life is a struggle. They're not in the land of rest yet.
But while they're on the way, God invites them in the wilderness to start living as if they're in the promised land.
But how do you practice the future rest in the wilderness?
Well, God tells them that every 7th day they are to stop their work, or in Hebrew, to Shabbat, so that they can rest and enjoy God's good world.
So take a whole day to live as if the ultimate rest has already come.
Yeah, this is the Sabbath, celebrated every week on the 7th day. But there's more. The Sabbath is just one of 7 festivals that Israel practiced every year, each one anticipating that 7th day rest.
That is a lot of 7s.
And there's even more. Every 7 years, the Israelites were to liberate slaves, forgive debts, and let the land rest for a whole year. And then, every 7 times 7 years was the ultimate 7th day rest, called the Year of Jubilee. If anyone had lost their land or gone into debt, all was forgiven, everything restored.
Wow, so the Sabbath, these feasts, the Year of Jubilee, it's all pointing towards the hope of future rest.
Right. Now, when the Israelites went into the land, they forgot their God, and so they forfeited their chance for rest in the promised land.
They're exiled and enslaved again by an oppressive nation, led back into a world of chaos and disorder.
But Israel's prophets said that their exile would end one day, and that the ultimate jubilee of freedom and rest would come But generations go by, and they're still waiting.
It's at this dark point in the story that Jesus appears, and he launches his public mission on a Sabbath day.
Yeah, he read aloud from the scroll of Isaiah, saying that it was time for all captives and slaves to be released because this was the year of the Lord's favor.
What did he mean, this is the year of the Lord's favor?
He was talking about the ultimate Jubilee.
Also, Jesus is claiming that seventh-day rest would come through him.
Right, he said that he was the Lord of the Sabbath, and he confronted disorder and darkness in all of its forms, liberating people from sickness, sin, even from death itself.
Yet, Jesus was killed, so even his work was undone.
Well, it seemed that way. But notice, Jesus timed his death to take place at the end of the week. His body rested in a tomb during the Sabbath, and on the 8th day, he rose from the dead.
Oh wait, the 8th day? You mean the first day of a new week?
Exactly. Jesus' resurrection was like the first day of a new creation, where God's light and life broke into the darkness.
So because of the resurrection, we have hope in God's promise of future rest. But we're not there yet. It's like we're still in the wilderness, where we experience struggle and pain.
But as we journey towards that ultimate seventh day, Jesus invites us to experience a taste of real rest now by following him. Or in his words, "Come to me, all you who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest."
Come to me, all you who are heavy laden, and I will give you rest. I think that's, for me, part of what I love about our faith is that it's, I don't know, like I rarely, I'm not that well learned in religions anyway, but I rarely hear of a faith where God is like, I don't want you to do anything.
Yeah,
just relax. And I think it, again, I was saying to Charlotte, it shows the heart of God for us that he designed us to be living from a place of rest and not striving, which is countercultural to us. And even as human beings, because I feel like there is this thing in us that wants to do and work. And I suppose for me, it's control of wanting to be the one to sort everything out for yourself. But what God says is the opposite. It's actually, I'm actually here for this. I'm the one that carries the burdens. I'm the one that has the capacity to do X, Y, and Z in your life. And you don't have to do things for yourself. It's kind of very counter to the whole independent woman type of thing of I could do things by myself, because I feel like that's something I've had to unlearn, especially when it comes to my faith, because it's counter to what God says. Because if you're independent of God, then you're carrying the load for yourself, and that's not what God wants.
Yeah, that's really interesting, because you think of like everything that's happening at the moment within the world in terms of, like, I guess, feminism and being a strong independent women, and that women can do anything, and they can do anything.
Absolutely.
But actually, if you partner with God in that, it's going to be so much more fruitful. And so I think it's like being that independent woman or independent man, but at the same time partnering with him. This is it. And moving forward that way, knowing that it comes from a place of continuous rest.
Exactly. And that's exactly the point I'm going to make, that Charlotte raised about continual rest. It's because when you think about resting, you almost think it's a physical stillness. So how do we physically or spiritually rest continually? And we're going to talk and give tips of how to do that. I mean, we don't promise to be people that know it all, but these are things that we've practiced in our own lives and what we found to be helpful. But before we do that, I wanted to kind of touch on a word that they have been mentioning all throughout the video called Sabbath or Sabbat or Shabbat or something. It's a Hebrew word, which basically means to rest, to cease, to stop, just be still. Stay still. And there's so much meaning to that word and implication. And it's funny how, I find it interesting in the video of how at the end of God creating, he rested, and that almost gives us the blueprint of how we ought to live, but how funny is it that that's totally not what we do?
I know.
I mean,
it's like counterintuitive.
It's counterintuitive. But how often, I'm not going to go into the debate of when we're supposed to do the Sabbath and how it works and this, that, and the other. But if we factored in a day where we actually were still I mean, I don't do that. I'm going to be honest to say,
Yeah.
I don't give myself days of rest. But if we follow the blueprint of God, how much more happier would we be in our own personal lives?
Yeah.
But that's specifically talking about this physical rest. But what I'm going to talk now about is spiritual resting. And the verse I want to bring to you guys to mind, which all of you guys should know, I'm guessing, is Psalm 23. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He makes me to lie down in green pastures, and he leads me beside still waters. But the verse I want to actually zoom in on is he makes me to lie down in green pastures. And I'm going to tell you a funny story, because when I was young, I literally would picture this verse like God is dragging me to the ground to sit down on green grass. That's what I was like, what does that mean? Why is God forcing me to sit on grass for? But it's actually a metaphor of how he wants us to rest. Resting is important to God. Like you resting, you being in a place of stillness and rejuvenation is important to God. That's why I guess that I like the word where it says he makes me to, because sometimes you need to be made to rest.
Yeah, sometimes you do. Like you literally need to be told you need to stop. Like my mum is one of these people. She will like continue to do things all the time, and we're like, okay, mum, you've done enough. Like just sit down, just chill out and rest.
Yeah, which is sometimes you need people like that in your life where they're like, I've noticed that you are overdoing it a bit. You actually need to, and to be honest, guys, do listen to, because sometimes God places people in your life that look out for you, because you don't notice in yourself that actually you're starting to reach a place of tiredness. And you know, that can be said spiritually as well. Yeah. But you know, in my own personal life, I can say that the revelation of spiritual rest has been one, it's progressive. I'm still growing in it. And this really comes to light when I look at serving God and serving in ministry. Now, I feel, and I've learned to serve God, to serve in ministry from a place of rest.
That's good.
And it sounds strange because you're doing, but you're resting. How does that work? I mean, in a sense where you're not doing it from a place of like straining, and you're exerting, you're forcing it type of thing, and you're just doing it from a place of I'm receiving and I'm flowing out type of thing. Like, you know,
instead of the doing, it's like the being.
Exactly. It's the being, and it's that continual reliance upon God's strength in you to do things. And honestly, God calls us to do amazing things, supernatural things that are beyond our strength. Yeah. But he empowers us to do that. And that's the spiritual rest I'm referring to, where you are not relying upon your own source, but it's the continual source that God has, or that rivers of living water that we often hear, which is the Holy Spirit in us, effectively. And all of us, if you're born again, have been given the Holy Spirit. So when I lead in worship, when I'm serving in ministry in that regard, I have to remind myself to do it from a place of rest, because there can sometimes be moments when you're leading worship and you're like, oh, it's on me now. I have to do this and that and the other. But the times when I feel like worship is so much more powerful is when I am not the one who feels like I'm doing it.
And pushing it. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. You know, and, you know, I think it's important as, you know, ministries, churches, to factor in also rest, isn't it?
Yeah. And coming from that as well, I mean, it was one of the churches that Sam and I used to go to. It was either in London or Dubai. But basically they used to have, it used to be called a pizza. I don't know why it was called a pizza. But basically every like couple of months they would send out this pizza. And it had different sections in it. It might have youth ministry, kids ministry, hosting, welcome, worship team, ushers, all that kind of thing. And it basically identified that you would commit to serving in an area for a period of time. So you would commit for say 2 months, 3 months at a time, and then it would be reevaluated from there. And it was your decision if you wanted to continue serving in that ministry, or if you wanted to try out another ministry, or if you wanted to take a place of rest for a little while. And actually it's so wise. It was so wise, because then it meant that people knew what they were committed to. They knew that when they were rostered that it was for a period of time during that church, and then there was a period of rest if they wanted it, or they wanted to move to another ministry if that's what God was telling them. And I think churches really need to like lead the way in that.
I agree,
because like you say, it is biblical to take rest. I mean, Jesus did it on multiple occasions after he had finished like feeding the 5,000, or God had finished feeding the 5,000. He went to the mountainside and he rested. And so it's a principle that we need to make sure that churches
we're practicing as well.
that churches
Absolutely.
lead the example and
Yeah.
lead the way in,
Absolutely.
so that the flock, the congregation of the church also take note that, hey, it's okay to rest. I don't need to feel like guilty about it. And so it just provided, the church provided a really good way of not overcommitting yourself. Someone once told me that
Wow.
never like over commit, basically.
Under
commit. Under promise
and then over
exceed.
Yeah.
And that people would be really happy with you doing that.
Yeah.
But if it's the other way around, then the expectations of other people aren't managed that well. If you say, yeah, I'm going to do this and this, but then don't do them. And that's a really hard lesson to learn, because a lot of us can be people pleasers as well.
Oh yes,
and
I can put my hands up for that.
Yeah, we want to be able to help. We know that we have like certain skills, but it just might not be the right time. So you end up committing to all of these things, and then actually you find yourself that you don't have enough time to do these things, and you squish it all in and hope for the best, or you end up not doing anything or not doing something.
Exactly. It's a pattern that we need to learn, because for me, I feel like if we take the example of Jesus, and the pattern that he shows us about resting is that he did serve, and and even then I felt like Jesus was showing us how he didn't do it in his own strength, but he was relying upon God to do everything. But physically as well, he would take himself out of the situation and rest. It's kind of a pattern, which is why we're saying, when we started to talk about spiritual rest, I feel like it really sets the pace for how you live the rest of your life, you know, and constantly reminding yourself that it is okay to rest, and there's so much power in that, because we think that when we cease to do stuff, that nothing happens, but the opposite happens. When you in faith cease to do something and let God take over, so much more happens, right? And I think there's so much power in resting.
There is a lot of power in resting. And the other thing that I was going to say as well is that, as people pleasers that some of us are, even Jesus didn't want to be around people all the time. It was something that I was reading today, and it said Jesus took time off when he'd had enough of people. And I mean, that's Jesus. Like, he loves people. That's all he cares about, right?
Jesus had to take time out.
Yeah, exactly. And so it said here, Jesus left that place and went to the vicinity of Tyre. He entered a house and did not want anyone to know it. He didn't want anyone to know that he was there, because he wanted to rest. He wanted to chill out. He wanted to do his own thing. He wanted to be with God, and he didn't want to have other people interrupt him.
And because he understood the importance of resting, because he needed to recuperate his energy to be able to continue.
Exactly.
It's that balance that we need to strike, you know. And sorry, did you want to add?
Yeah, and I was just going to say that's in Mark 7 verse 24. So
it is biblical.
It's biblical. It's in there.
So we're not just making stuff up. This is in the Bible. What we're saying is biblical. And the other bit I wanted to talk about rest and the power of rest is when we step back, God steps in and he takes over. And there's that scripture that I absolutely love. It's from Isaiah 40:29 to 31. Check it out, guys. I'm gonna just paraphrase it a little bit, but I'd encourage you to read it. It says, those that wait upon the Lord shall renew their strength. They shall mount up on wings as eagles. They shall run and not grow weary. They shall walk and not faint. Now, I think just before that section, it talks about how even youths will, even young men will get tired and this, that, and the other. So physically, the people that are supposed to be super fit all the time, even they will get tired. But what this verse is describing is the supernatural strength you'll get from leaning on God and from a place of rest. It's like you're waiting on God and he's renewing your strength so you can mount up on wings as eagles, so you can run and not grow weary. And as we are, in the church serving and serving in ministry, you're going to be called perhaps for a season to serve in a particular area to prevent yourself from burning out, which I'm guessing we're going to talk about soon, is to continually lean on God and also have those patterns of resting and reviewing. You know what, like Charlotte was saying about the church you went to, where they have like
a review period to make sure that their flock is healthy, I guess, in a way. But I mean, like you're saying, in terms of like a review period, it's important that we set ourselves time to actually think about, hey, what am I doing this for?
That's good.
What's the reason behind this? Is this still what God wants me to do in this season? Is it where in my heart is it coming from? You're like doing a heart assessment. Someone told me, like asking your heart questions about what you're serving in or what the busyness of your life is at the moment. And you mentioned earlier that
I had to do that. I had to do that. I mean, I again, I'm learning. I didn't know that it was a thing, but there was a time where I think it was beginning of March where I had to just stop. I had to cease doing activities and stuff, and I had to ask myself, like, why is this actually what God intends me to do in a particular season? Like, for example, worship ministry, I've been doing it since I was 16 years old, and that's like good.
That's a long time.
It's a long time, and I've never asked myself, is this actually what God still wants me to do for this, or in the way that I'm doing?
Yeah.
And sometimes the way, like me just saying that now, I almost felt like, why should I question what God has put on me? Do you know what I mean? But that's coming from a place of fear or anxiety, because there's that tendency to feel like, in order to be a Christian, I have to be constantly seen doing stuff and being busy and stuff. But that isn't what God's heart is for you.
Yeah, I know. I think sometimes there's like, we've touched on it slightly, that there's a guilt behind it.
Yeah.
That if you don't serve or if you don't do anything. Now, serving is biblical, and we should be serving God in some kind of capacity. But again, it comes in seasons of our lives. You know, like it can be different if you've just had 2 kids, or you've got something going on in your life that requires your attention and time. That actually, in 6 months' time, you know that you can give 100% to serving in that area or that ministry. I know when Sam and I were youth leaders in London, we committed to a lot, and we were trying to do a lot of things within the youth ministry. And I remember once we were meeting with one of the other pastors from the same church, basically, but a different location, if that makes sense. And he was asking us how youth ministry was going, and he was like, oh, what are you doing? And we were like, yeah, we're doing this and this and this. Wow. And we were like, and then he said to us, you're doing too much. Like, you're like stretching yourselves too thin. And at the time I was like, how? Like, we're doing all these like things for the youth because we want it to be fruitful for them, and we want to give them loads of like, activities and like things to continue for them, whether that's like after school club and then hang out on a Friday night, and then like some kind of group activity or socials, and there was just a lot going on. And he then said to us, yeah, you're doing too much, like you'll stretch yourself too thin and you'll burn out. And basically that, to a degree, that is what happened, because we thought that actually doing as much as possible would be great for the youth. But in reality, doing a couple of things really well was a much better way of doing it, and using the other time to rest appropriately and to like get input ourselves from God and fill our cups up so that we could then overflow into them, because otherwise we've got nothing to give.
Yeah, absolutely. I think what you're saying is that the difficulty is you're doing good. It's not like if you were doing stuff.
I know. Yeah,
you were doing good, but even in the doing good, I think there's that verse in Paul. I think Paul says it all the way in the New Testament about all things are, what's the word? Something is good, but it's not always beneficial. I'm really paraphrasing here, and it's that kind of thing to say, because what Charlotte's describing is something I've experienced myself, where there's a ministry that's come up and they're like, Tanya, do you want to get involved with this? And I'm like, yes, why not? But sometimes God, and in those times I would pray about it and God would be like, no. And I'm like, this can't be God, of course. I mean, it's ministry. Hello, I'm doing things.
Why wouldn't I be doing it?
Why wouldn't I?
It's a God thing.
It's a God thing. But sometimes know your seasons, know what God is calling you to do, and be fruitful in that. There's no good in spreading yourself so thin that you're not productive in anything.
And I think there's like a maturity and a wisdom in that as well, being able to like identify that. And sometimes that comes with past experience, knowing that what you did previously didn't work. You know, you were tired emotionally, physically, mentally, spiritually, the lot. But then actually later on, you then realise, no, I can't overcommit this time, because I learned from last time that it didn't work well and it didn't end well. So I think it's just being honest with yourself, being transparent and saying, hey, it didn't work last time. I'm not going to like overdo it this time.
Learn from the lessons that you...
learn from your lessons. I think other people's lessons
other people as well, why you shouldn't have to go through something. Listen to other people. And just as Charlotte's talking, there's a word we're saying, burnout, which you may not necessarily be accustomed to. Do you want to give people... What is burnout, and what are the sort of the signs of burnout?
Yeah, so I think we say burnout a lot as Christians, and basically we mean that we've overdone it. It's kind of like, it's not a breakdown, but it's just basically like we've said yes to a lot of things, and it's come to the point now where we are lacking. We're depleted spiritually, we're depleted physically and mentally, and potentially in other ways as well. And so it's called burnout, and you've got nothing left to give, basically, because what you are giving out isn't replaced by what you're putting in.
Exactly.
So you end up with this empty bowl, if that makes sense. That you've got nothing to overflow for other people, or even for yourself, to be honest. So that's what we call burnout in like Christian circles. And then like ways to avoid it, I think, are just, you've got a list of really good things.
Oh yes. And then what are the signs for someone who's never experienced burnout? What would you say these are telltale signs, like for someone, if they're feeling this way, maybe it's a good check-in for them?
So definitely I'll be checking like your heart posture, asking yourselves, you know, when you've like committed to something and at the very beginning you're like really excited about it, you're you like want to get the ball rolling, you're building momentum, you're joyful in that moment when you're doing it, but then later on it kind of becomes a chore and you're like, I really don't want to go tonight, I don't want to prepare this, I don't want to do that, and you kind of like get resentful of it. Resentful.
Exactly.
And so it's really good to like check in with yourself and ask yourself those questions, or like if you've got someone that you're accountable to, get them to like ask you questions like that, and make sure you're honest. Sometimes we like
you put on a brave face
under the carpet and we kind of like just let it go, but actually God requires honesty, and people around you deserve honesty as well, especially when you're put in a position where you're responsible for leading something that people are going to get fed from and God is going to use you in. And so you have to be honest with yourself and honest with the leaders around you, which we don't tend to do sometimes because there's a vulnerability to it, but actually it's really important we learn how to do that effectively,
because God puts you in communities for people to look out for you as well, because
they care about you,
and there's things in you that you can't recognize in yourself, and someone has to tell you, do you know what, the way you've been in lovingly, you're actually tired, you're exhausted, you're actually on the verge of a burnout, you need to stop. Like having those people whom you can be transparent with and vulnerable. One other signs and symptoms of a burnout that I was just thinking about was, I suppose it's this isolation. You almost, and also like a spiritual isolation. Your relationship with God does get affected when you're burning out. You know, you just, everything is just tiring to you. You can't even communicate with God well. Even some of your loved ones, you're just frustrated and irritable, you know,
unfortunately.
And it's
kind of like being hangry, but
but long term, you know. And what we're doing is we want to give you guys tips to prevent that. So if you're recognizing some of these signs in yourself, stop. Your body's telling you stuff, you know. Sometimes your body gives you signs and signals, and it's important for us to listen. You know,
I think that comes with the whole, like, there's a lot of debate at the moment being like mentally aware of your life and making sure that you're mentally healthy. Like that's all over the newspapers and like just general press at the moment. And the same thing applies to this, really, is understanding that actually it might not necessarily be a physical issue, that it could be a mental, spiritual concern that's happening in the background. So it's kind of having that awareness too.
And the thing is, God wants us to be healthy, not just physically, not just spiritually, not just emotionally, mentally, the whole package. You know, He wants us to be healthy in He wants us to be fruitful in every single area of our life. He wants us to have abundant life. You know, our life, you know, there's so much diversity in our lives. So I think it's just addressing those important ones.
And
as
I feel like as well, like as God's people, you know, you're saying that He wants us all of those things. We should be like leading the way in those things in terms of like spiritual health, mental health, physical health as well. To making sure that we are the healthiest of ourselves that we can be, because ultimately we know how to unlock God and hear the Holy Spirit. It's just a case of doing it and putting time aside to partner with Him in that.
So just to wrap up, I know time is fast spent.
It's
incredibly fast. I mean, I have some tips for you guys. Like I said, this is not exhaustive, and you guys may have tips for us as well. So please do comment about spiritual rest and practicing spiritual rest. For me, it starts with posture. So remember at the beginning of the broadcast, we talked about start the week, which I said was a good way to posture my heart for the week. And that for me is a good practice in general, how you posture yourself. So by that, it's kind of what's your focus on? What's your attention on?
Yeah.
And the best way you can focus your attention is by prayer and like just setting aside time to just spend time with God in prayer, in worship, anything that you can do to just, I suppose, remind yourself that God is there, you know,
and He's bigger.
And He's bigger.
Yeah, like it refocus on like the smaller things that you're maybe focusing on, and takes it to like the whole bigger picture.
Exactly, the bigger picture. So that's one tip I would say. It's a good place to start. Ask. For me, asking God how to rest is another good way to do it, because He knows you, He created you, He knows what you need. Yeah. So don't feel like you have to know your whole body, because I mean, we're all learning here. So ask God how to rest, and also ask God for strength. Ask God for what you need. Basically, that is reminding yourself that God is the one who's the giver. He's the one who's the source. He's the creator. He's my Abba, Father. Yeah. And if I unpack what Abba means, it's too powerful. But Abba's kind of like source. It's like that's what it, in a nutshell. So asking God for what you need is a good way to practice spiritual rest. Yeah. Community, we talked about it. Putting yourself in a place where you're surrounded by people who you look out for and they look out for you, so that you remember, because sometimes we forget about resting. Yeah. Strengthen one another. Yeah, you know, strengthen one another with psalms, hymns, and spiritual songs, because there's such power in community. Yeah. And the last thing I said is praise and worship. I love praise and worship. It's powerful. Yeah. And that's another way for me to, again, it's a thing of posture. Yeah. A thing of enjoy, like having joy in my life when I'm in the presence of God. That helps me as well to remain in rest. Any tips for you, Charlotte?
I would just say, like, if you're in a work environment or if you're in an environment with other people and you're a leader, you are responsible for that team, and that means leading the way in rest as well. Yeah. And so taking it upon yourself to be that person of counterculture, to develop a culture within your team that it's okay to take rest, that it's acceptable, that it's needed, that it's required for your team to then accelerate and move forward. That's good. It's like taking rest to then be sustainable and accelerate for the future, which is what you want from a team environment, or whether that's corporately or individually as well.
Absolutely. Even like in a church team as well. Like if you're a church leader, just kind of encouraging your team as well to be resting, you know. So that's really good. Any last tips for the guys?
I don't think so. No, rest is important.
Rest is important, guys. So go run yourself a bubble bath.
Candles. In fact, when I get home, that's what I'm expecting.
So
you know?
Works. I mean, Sam, you got to cook dinner and run a bath.
Those bath toys to be out of the way, the bath mat to be not there, a nice fresh towel that's come out of the tumble dryer, maybe.
Some candles.
A
nice hot drink. But yeah, guys, I hope that you've taken something from today, and if anything, learn this, that God cares about your resting, and rest is important to God, you know.
Canel's just written something which is really cool. She says, I know a couple who takes a year off ministry every 7 years to rest and reset, which is really interesting, because we were saying earlier that 7 years is a pivotal point in the Bible.
Yes. Yeah, it's really powerful. Like, watch the video back, guys. It's or we can it's called Sabbath by the Bible Project, but basically it's talking about the implications of the sevens and how, you know, it's really powerful. I just saw a message from Lisa. Hi, Lisa. Yes, you can absolutely watch this back. We are coming to the end of our broadcast, but you are most welcome to watch this back on our Facebook and YouTube.
That's it.
Yes, guys. Well, thank you very much for joining us. It's been good to see you, and you will be seeing us soon again. Yeah. Well, God bless. Good night. Anything else to say, Charlotte?
No, just be restful. We pray that you have an awesome week, and we hope to see you again soon.
See you soon.
Bye.